And building that brand is the hardest thing for an entrepreneur because you have to have credibility. People don't just trust you and give you money. They have to they have to recognize your brand, and they have to be know that that's a solid brand and I want to do business with them.
From mastering the art of saving to harnessing the power of investments, we cover it all. But it's not just about the money. It's about cultivating a millionaire mindset that propels you towards success in every aspect of your life. Join our community of ambitious go-getters and discover the secrets to becoming a millionaire by morning. Subscribe now to Millionaire by Morning on your favorite podcast platform. And let's make your financial dreams a reality. Millionaire by Morning, where money mindset, motivation, and mastery meet. Subscribe today and unlock your path to prosperity.
Hello out there. Welcome back to the Millionaire by Morning podcast. We are here today with Janice Brathwaite. She is a certified executive and life coach with over 17 years of experience helping mission-driven organizations build people-first workplace cultures. I want to welcome you to the show today, Ms. Brathwaite. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I am doing just fine. I am glad to have you on the show today.
Glad.
We want to talk about, excuse me, we want to talk a little bit about workplace culture. That's something that we haven't had a guest on the show to speak on that topic. However, we have had guests on the show to bring up culture and the importance of it
Yeah.
within the workplace.
Yeah.
So thank you for being on today.
Okay. Well, thank you for having me.
So if we could go back, I guess,
Okay.
and get kind of into you are a coach at this moment, and coaching workplace C-suite executives, and 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 know a lot about the organizational structure.
Hmm.
What made you get into this line of business? If you could, kind of take us back. And I guess what type of education as well
Hmm.
did you need to, get to being a coach?
Okay. Well, I think the one thing that really drew me to this work is I've been in the workforce quite a long time. I won't tell you how many years, but a long time. And one of the questions I kept asking myself at one point was, why haven't things gotten better for employees? Sometimes we have gains and then it just kind of goes away and we're right back to square one again. And what's the cause of that? What makes this happen? And I did a lot of research. I got a master's in management, and I also got certified as a executive coach and a life coach. I also got certified by Human Synergistics, which was the number one, I think, culture assessment company probably in the world. And so as I started to dig deeper into this, I realized that um, how do I frame this? How do I tell people what culture is? What does it look like? And I said, I'm a pretty visual person. So I had to visualize what would it look like. And I said, after doing a lot of research, I said, well, it's the foundation. It's the foundation of the organization. Everything that's happened in that organization is built into that culture. Over time, it builds. And I said, it's kind of like bricks in a foundation. Over time, those bricks, different bricks are added, new things come into the culture, and new things are taken out. But one of the things I said was, what makes that culture unstable? And that's, to me, is that when it becomes unstable, it's because there are cracks in the culture, like there are cracks in bricks. If you are building a building and the foundation starts to, to crack, bricks start to crack, eventually that organization is going to become very unstable. And I think that's a lot of what you're seeing right now is that people are not really honed in on those areas that need to be addressed. those cracks. Not everything in your organization is bad. You know, some bricks are really good. They're strong, they're holding on, but some are not so great. And those are the ones you really need to address. So that's how I got to where I am right now.
Okay. So give us an example of the bad bricks. What does that look like?
Well, I think that some of the things that people are struggling with now is toxicity in the workplace. And someone asked me in one of my previous podcasts, are toxic leaders born or made? And I said, they're made. And they're made because oftentimes what you see in organizations is that the people that are the most toxic are the ones that rise up to higher levels. So if you're a person that's just starting out and you see this transpiring, you say to yourself, well, if I want to move up, I'm going to have to be like them. And so you become kind of a clone of that person. And that's how it perpetuates over the course of time, because you oftentimes see people who are really not very good leaders or not very good people sometimes that actually become high level executives, and you're like, what? How did that happen? Nobody's paying attention. So that's one of the things that I see is toxic workplace. And there's a lot of talk now about abuse in the workplace. I think that's pretty strong language, but there's actually somebody out there now that's got a whole campaign going about reducing abuse in the workplace. Um, the other thing is there are pieces of the organization like communication or recognition that are not really done. Sometimes not done at all, but sometimes not done as much as it should be. And that again causes the culture to be kind of not stable. But the biggest thing is, leadership plays a huge role in this. And they can't say, well, it's not my fault. Well, it's not your fault. Maybe you didn't cause this to happen, but you're dealing with it now. So you need to deal with it. You can't just say, I'm not going to worry about it. Somebody else did that. I'm not going to worry about it. So those are the things. I think that toxicity in the workplace is really a big umbrella, which a lot of stuff falls under.
So I like to ask you, are you seeing at the moment in time, there is a transitioning happening of upper management um, or the elder employees retiring
Hmm.
and younger employees moving up into management and having older people work up under them.
Yep.
Do you see that being a problem? Have you is that shaky? Is that normally a shaky brick, or is there something that can be said for that, or that can be handled, nipped in the bud, and the company can move forward?
Well, it depends on how it's done. Bringing somebody into a leadership position. People. I'll tell you a story, and then that'll kind of frame the whole thing. So when I first became, I wasn't a high level leader. I was like a manager of a area of a particular company, and I had no clue what I was doing. I mean, I knew the technical part, but the people part, no clue. So I remember that it dawned on me when I was in a meeting and I made someone cry. And at that point, I said to myself, Janice, you either need to learn how to do this right or you need to get out because you can't be doing this to people. So then I started, taking courses and reading and doing all kinds of things to try to bring my skills up. And I think that's what it is. A lot of times people are promoted because they're doing a good job, but that doesn't make them a manager. That doesn't make them a leader. You're when you become a leader, you're not doing the work. You're you are facilitating the work.
Right.
And that's a whole different thing. So if people can't motivate and recognize and, work with or be able to console or coach or whatever their people, then they're not really, they probably shouldn't be in that job.
Right.
That's what it's about. It's about facilitation. So I went back and I learned how to do it, and I made mistakes along the way, like anyone does. But eventually, I realized how to get the best out of the people that were working with me.
Got it. So what about work ethics? I hear so much now that those are two totally different work ethics from the boomers, Gen X. They pretty close. They have the same work ethics, but when the younger generations start coming in, it's a little bit more laid back. It's things that you have to allow. For
Hmm.
instance, you have to allow room for the younger generation to come in the door a few minutes later
Hmm.
instead of having, you know, a time set. A lot of the time I hear people that say they don't have a concept of
Time.
coming in on time like older generations do.
Mhm.
Have you seen any of that?
Well, I do a whole. I actually spoke on this at the Illinois Primary Healthcare Association. It's bringing intergenerational understanding into the workplace. And I think we've done ourselves a big disservice by segregating people into letters. And to me, that's stereotyping because not everybody in that group is the same. It's like saying all people of color are or all women are. You know, to me, it doesn't make the workplace any better. You're building divisions between people. And so when I did this whole presentation, I talked a lot. So what do we do? How do we bring all of these generations together so that you can bring out the best in each one? And I feel it's by people getting to interact together. I might work a little bit different than a Gen Xer, but I need to understand how you work and you need to understand how I work so that you have a clear view of our styles. So what I tell people is, in order to break these walls down and get rid of these letters, I say an employee resource groups are, I say repurpose employee resource groups at this particular moment so that you can have, you celebrate a lot of things in these ERGs, Women's History Month, Black History Month, but nobody ever talks about age. And, younger people, the two areas that feel the most stereotyped are younger people and older people. And the people in the middle, yeah, a little bit, but not as bad as if you're an older generation or you're a younger generation. And I say, when supposing you go into an interview and you don't know exactly how old this person is, but you can kind of guess. Everybody knows that people, calculate and they come up with an average. Well, this person's probably around this age. And if you have a particular idea about who that person is and what their traits are, and you get in that, you're going to be looking for those things, and you're not going to be able to really be unbiased about it because you've already got a preconceived notion. Okay, I know this. I know this person's 24 because I can tell by when they graduated. So I know that they're in this category. In that category, there are these traits. Well, I don't know. I don't know if I really want to hire somebody that's going to have these things, have to deal with these things. So you're basically pushing somebody out the door, which is what they used to do. When affirmative action came in, this was what it was all about, giving everybody an equal chance. But I think if you keep doing this, you're going to keep divisions.
Mm,
And I say, get rid of them. When my friends say, "Oh, well, the Gen Zs," I'm like, "Stop, just stop, right where you are. That is not how we're going to approach this. I don't want to hear that." So that's what I've been talking about in a couple of speeches that I've done, is how to break down those walls between generations and to bring better understanding um, within the groups.
I'm glad that I'm glad that you're on this topic. I'm glad that we're on this topic. So what I'm hearing you say is Generation X and I guess the newer generation, what's that, Generation Z,
Hmm.
they're going to have to find a common ground.
Yes.
So, you see it all the time where you see that Generation X, tough as nails, latchkey kids,
Mhm.
stayed at home, was basically grown by the age of 14.
Right.
And then you have the newer generations who have never been outside and drank water out of a water faucet. So now you have two different people that may have two different outlooks on life
Mhm.
and may have two different ways of retaining, holding information. Where would the common ground be
I think
between the two?
it's understanding. It's understanding the other person. It's like I say, it's no different that when a person of color comes into an organization that um, they're not stereotyped as, well, they're this, they're okay. I know how they're going to act because I
Right.
know what those people do. Um, so it's breaking down those thoughts, the thought process. It's like anything else. ERGs work on things like, you know, you know, race and religion, not religion, but race, sex, you know, LGBTQ plus topics, and that's to bring understanding. So if I'm sitting in that group and I'm not in one of those categories, so to speak, I can learn to understand how someone else feels about the way you're stereotyping them, or the way you're treating them, or what they need, and also, like I said, you can take this to another level by getting people to understand each other's work styles. Yes, somebody in a younger generation coming in, first of all, you got to give them some grace because they haven't been in, they're coming in. So you can't say, well, they should know this, this, and this, because they don't. They're going to learn if they want to stay in the workforce. They're going to learn, but you don't come in there fully formed. I know when I came into the workforce, I came in. I was a boomer. I am a boomer, and I'm sure that people said about the boomers, those boomers, they want everything. You can't tell them anything. They want to be the same things you say about people today that older people say about younger people. It's no different.
Got it. So the bricks that you were speaking of earlier, you have some strong, you have some weak. So if let's just say the same way that you said that you have to look at leadership in some way. So if you do see a person that kind of fit that mold, or you see a person that, you know, are of the caliber, I guess, of the of course you can't say just because this person is Gen Z, they're not going to work out.
Right.
Or, this person is older, they're not going to work out. But when it comes down to the job, if you see them being a little shaky, is it automatically time to get rid of them?
No, I think you have to give have to give people a chance. And you have to not only give them a chance, you have to give them training. We don't all come into the workforce knowing everything about everything.
Right.
At times we had to go and be trained to use a certain computer system or software or whatever it might be. So you have to give people a chance to learn. And And I think a lot of times having younger people and even older people having a mentor. I mean, I had a mentor, far into my career, because I wanted to learn how to speak better in front of an audience, and this person was very good at that. So used to meet with her and talk about, how what her style is, how did she do this, what should you do if you're in this situation. So I think that's it. I mean, I think sometimes we're too willing to throw people away. That just let's okay. mm, They're going. It's like a revolving door. They're out, another one comes in. They're out, another one comes in. You
Well,
can't.
so there's with I guess the new age of doing things, there's um a new way that people are subscribing to that I am hearing entrepreneurs subscribe to, and that is um what fire hard, fire fast. It's something like that, but I know it's fire fast. And that's a new way that I guess I don't know. It saves money in the long run, I suppose. And, when you first see someone who's not cutting it, get rid of them so that they don't infect the culture of the company. So I've heard that, and I was just asking that. Um, I was asking that to you to see if you subscribe to that as well.
Well, I mean, I think you have to give people an opportunity, a chance. And if you see them after training and giving them, when you put somebody in a 90-day PIP, performance improvement plan, you have certain things that should be laid out as what you want, what you expect to happen. And they shouldn't be like, they should be very clear. At the end of this 90 days, these are the things you're going to be working on. And at the end of these 90 days, we're going to assess how well you did. What's happening now with a lot of companies is they're using performance improvement plans to lay people off, but they're not calling it a layoff. They're saying that they couldn't do the job. For some reason they couldn't do the job. Now Amazon does this, Google does it, Meta does it. It's one other company that I can think of that does this as well. This is what they use this PIP for, and the PIP has become. I wrote a newsletter about it. I call it the Iron Fist in a Velvet Glove because it looks like it's helping you, but there's an ulterior motive at the end of it to really get rid of you.
Oh wow.
It's insidious and it's happening a lot. And the reason why they do this is because they don't have to give severance
Right.
and they don't have to pay unemployment because technically you got fired. Now, I'm sure you could go your unemployment and dispute it and try, hopefully, get some remediation. But that's a lot of that's what's happening. And, employees aren't stupid. They know that sometimes when they get a PIP, it's not there to help them.
Yeah.
There's not no help coming your way. It's
Oh,
there
wow.
to get you out.
So let me ask you about that. How do you feel about it? It seems like nowadays the corporations, the some jobs. Let me not say, all of them.
Mhm.
Some jobs, it seems like this work culture these days and times, the company is against the employee. Is how it's coming off.
Well, it's an us versus them. And one of the things I'm a big proponent of is leaders have gotten stuck in their offices. Like it's like their, you know, little kingdom, their office. And they don't really get out and talk to their employees at all. So it's an us versus them. That's when it becomes an us versus them because you don't really know your employees. I I used to do something when I was in banking called management by walking around, which is not something I made up, but some it's in some book that this person talks about this. And what I would do is I would get up and I would go out and talk to the employees. And I didn't always talk about work. It was to get to know them and for them to get to know me. As long as leaders stay in their ivory towers, they're not going to have good relationships with their employees.
Right. And now you have, it seems to have a culture of people who are, well, there's no longer long-term employment,
Hmm.
people that jump from job to job.
Yeah.
And do you feel like the jobs or companies are feeding into that instead of trying to keep their employees longer? They're finding a way to, help them along with short-term employment.
Um, I think that, when I early on in my career, I jumped from job to job and I did it because it was opportunity. I always looked at it as opportunity. Opportunity to maybe get a better title, an opportunity to get more money and get more knowledge. And I've been in several different industries and it was based on that. It was based on when I worked for Xerox Corporation really early in my career. And I remember at the 5 year mark, I decided I was going to leave. And I was remember telling my father I was leaving. And he said, "You're crazy. Why are you leaving?" And I said, "Well, I think that, I would like to be doing something else. I'd like to be, maybe in a different kind of industry." But it was really hard for him to understand, coming from his generation, that why would you leave a stable job and go someplace else?
Yeah.
I think, for me, it was the right move. Maybe it isn't for everybody, but it certainly allowed me to move up in corporations and companies, to get to where I felt I wanted to be. And the money of course follows because your title gets larger or bigger, you have bigger scope of responsibility. But I think it's good. I tell people that come into the, I should probably say this. I tell people that come into the nonprofit world, don't stay in the nonprofit world forever. Go to the for-profit world. It will give you a different perspective on how to run a nonprofit,
Hmm.
because some nonprofit people have been in it since their first job was in a nonprofit. And I remember having this conversation with a employee, and I said, "Try it. Go out, find something different that's outside of your." Because I think what brought me when I went into the nonprofit world, I had a lot of for-profit skills, and I was able to see things that sometimes the times other people couldn't see
Right.
because of where I came from.
What is your, when you go into these companies and speak with them and kind of advise or coach,
Mhm.
do you have a framework that you use to, utilize and to measure what the company? Okay, can you go over that and tell us just a, you know,
Well,
example of the framework?
one of the things that most people, it's a five-prong process, but the one that's the most important, I think, for organizations is, to be able to justify this culture change in the terms of a monetary or return on investment. And a lot of people that come in, they do all the fuzzy stuff, like, I have this one, I'll call it fuzzy stuff, but stuff like leadership labs, which I have, and those that give leaders a chance to kind of, be coached and learn how to communicate better and so forth. But I think when it comes right down to the bottom line, the ROI, you have to be able to prove that this change in your culture is impacting your organization in a positive way. Because isn't that what most, I mean, whether they're for profit or nonprofit, they still have to keep the doors open and the lights on and, people getting paid. So you gotta justify why you want to do this. And you've got to show that it did have an impact. And that's why what I do is, I tell people, I want you to check this I've got a process, you use it. You should check it every 3 months to see where you are with this change. Has it made a difference? There may be a necessary need to tweak it a little. And then I said, and I follow you for about 6 months. And in that 6 month period, I kind of consider myself still a consultant because I've worked with you before. And, come to me and say, hey, you know what we talked about? We're going to make this change. It didn't work out as quite as we would have liked it. So what can we do to fix that? And then take it from there. But most of I this is my way of doing this. Really, the bottom line. Um, Change comes from the top down, not from the bottom up. And the first thing I do is I work with the CEO, executive director, or whatever the title, the highest title in the organization, to see where they are and to see how committed they are to making these changes or doing this process. Then I talk to the senior leadership team to kind of gauge where they are. What are they seeing? What kind of problems? Because and I ask the CEO, what keeps you up at night? What kinds of things keep you up at night based on your company or your organization? The senior leadership team, I talk to them, and as you start moving down through the organization, you find that oftentimes that what the top seeing is not what everyone else is seeing. So there's a disconnect on that particular thing. So you're going to try to, the most important thing you can do this work is to get your leadership to buy into it because they're the ones that are going to push it. When it comes time to do an assessment, if the CEO is going to say, I feel this is valuable and I want you all to participate, you know, you know, act like you really believe that this is what should be done. Don't no lip service. Just tell them how you feel.
Be a leader.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, that's what you're getting paid for is to lead. And I think that sometimes leaders don't quite understand that, they people are looking up at you. They're looking at you all the
Right.
time. And that's what makes leadership difficult because people are monitoring, they're watching you, they're seeing if you're following the values of the organization. You say these are your values, but are you actually doing those values? Are you letting us do those values? Or are you telling us, oh yeah, we these are our values, but we're gonna really do this over here. So don't worry
Right.
about it.
Saying but not doing.
Yes.
So we speak about marketing
Mhm.
on this show as well. Um, how do you how do you find your clients as far as these executives? Is it something that networking? Are you at a word of mouth type of status now, or how does that work at this time?
For me, it's marketing, and I have a marketing person that works with me, has been working with me from the very beginning, and she does all the postings that I do, like on LinkedIn. She does the couple of times a week. She does postings. I approve everything she does, but she's the one that actually executes. Um, the other thing is, I interacted with a PR firm um, uh, about 3 months for about 3 months and I learned so much around how to position yourself and how important it is to have a brand that people look up, not look up to, but maybe that's the right word, look up to and say, yes, they're a brand and they stick with that brand. They don't go off brand. And building that brand is the hottest thing for an entrepreneur because you have to have credibility. People don't just trust you and give you money. They have to they have to recognize your brand and they have to be know that that's a solid brand and I want to do business with them. So that's what it is. Building that is the toughest piece. When I came into this, I had no idea what I was doing. And and I fumbled around for a while and tried to figure it out. But I think now, I know now that I have a clearer direction and about how I present myself to the world or my company to the world. And I think if I hadn't done that 3 months with PR people, I don't think I would have been that clear about it. And my
Mhm.
materials wouldn't have been so consistent,
Yes.
because when you have a brand, they have to be consistent. Because people say, "What's that? What? Why that doesn't go with what she's saying?"
Right.
So yeah, so that was a great help. I suggest people definitely do it to get a PR firm, get a PR company or firm that you can work with for a brief time. It'll cost you some money, but in the long run, it's worth it.
It's worth it. PR firm, brand strategist.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. Yep.
So what do you have planned for the future, whether it be short term or long term goals?
Well, my plan is to keep growing the company. I mean, it's my legacy. I look at this as my legacy. This is my capstone. If you were in graduate school, you would have a capstone. And it's my capstone. And, I want to leave something. I think as you age, you want to leave something valuable to people as your legacy. And I see by continuing to, be the bellwether for organizational culture and talking about it all the time, I can make an impact. I can change things. I can get people to think differently. When I first started my newsletter on LinkedIn, I had 3 people, and now I have 400. So 400 people are listening now to what I'm saying and what my philosophy is about work, about leadership. So building that kind of credibility, it takes time,
Yes.
you know. Unless you've inherited a company, it takes time to build a company.
Most definitely. Most definitely. And your work is very, very much needed. Um, so
Thank
we
you.
hope to continue to see you keep building and keep letting the world know. Are you involved in social media in any way? And what I mean by that, I know you have a LinkedIn, but are you giving daily tactics? Are you, really putting yourself out there at this time?
Facebook and Instagram, we post twice a week on
Okay.
Facebook and Instagram. Um, and but because LinkedIn is the business platform, I guess they consider themselves. Um, a lot of the people that I connect with are people that are, that people that I need to touch,
Right.
to get to. And it's not always easy to get to them, if you just call them on the phone. But if you drop them a note, sometimes they'll say, "Oh yeah, I'll connect to you." And so they get to start to see what you're doing and how you're doing it.
Right. Awesome. So awesome. So what is your LinkedIn for the people that's listening and want to connect with you
Oh, C no, J Brathwaite at LinkedIn.com.
at linkedin.com?
Hmm.
Okay. And do you have any digital product or a book or anything at
Um,
this moment in time?
I have called something called a culture clarity snapshot, which is a way for it's only like 10 questions, and it's a way for organizations to start the conversation around culture. And it's simple to take, and it's free. I offer it for free because I feel like this is a good way to people to start thinking in a different way about the culture, their culture. So that's one of the things that I absolutely give away. So if anybody wants it, just reach out to me and I'd be more than happy to supply it. But I think it's a really good tool to start out. And I have other tools. I mean, I have like assessments and things that I do, pulse surveys that I've created that people can use to kind of take the pulse of what's going on in the organization. And really tied to what is the culture shifting, or is it staying the same, or is it getting worse? So those are things that I've created as I've seen the need. I've started to create things.
And the newsletter, that's definitely that's a product as well. So you can register for um, the newsletter on
Yes,
LinkedIn.
yes. And I
Okay.
really, appreciate people when they do, because it kind of gets out. Like this week, I wrote about the COVID, what happened with the workforce during COVID and what's happening at now, and drew a correlation between the two things, and what will happen if we continue, because of financial issues that the companies are having, doing what they're doing, and then down the road you're going to have the same problem. You're going to have quiet quitting. You're going to have great resignation. People are going to leave. So you've got to really think about that. Is that the right way to go?
Right.
So that was my most recent one, because I see a lot of people pulling back on training and development, not just culture stuff, but training and development, because they're saying they don't have any money. Well, what message does that send to your employees? We
Right.
don't really we don't really care about you, and we're not going to develop you. So, um, and especially this is true, and hopefully this is changes in healthcare. But right now, healthcare is in a difficult spot, and
Yeah.
they're pulling in the reins. But you want to keep the people that you've got, and you want to attract new people. What are you offering them as far as development?
You're right. These companies have to get it together. And I think what you're doing is perfect for the time that we are in,
Hmm.
and they have to figure it out. They have to get it together because
Sure,
a lot of employees are just at this moment, what is the use?
exactly. Why am I coming to work? You know, I'm miserable. I hate what I'm doing, and my manager doesn't know what they're doing, and they treat me really bad. And it's like, you might stay for a while, but after a while, that's going to grind you to grind you down, and you're going to have to leave.
Right, right. It just there's no other choice.
Yep,
I see people now, they talking about homesteading just
yep,
because that's how miserable it is to a lot of people.
yep, yep.
But
So
Janice, I truly think that you are doing the Lord's work. And I want to thank you for coming on the Millionaire by Morning show and blessing my listeners with some knowledge, workplace knowledge, and transformation. There's a lot of people out there that's hiring and want to keep their employees, happy.
mhm,
And if you do, everything that we do, you mentioned earlier a coach, a consultant.
right.
Sometimes you just need to get with someone and break it down to the simplest of terms
Mhm,
and build from the ground up. I agree with you that leadership starts from the top and trickles down to the bottom. So anyone out there, that does have a group, or you have employees, or you have affiliates, be the best leader that you can be so they can follow in your footsteps.
exactly.
And remember to continue to make moves, make money, and make meaningful memories. Thanks again, Janice.
All right. Thank you so much.